Hello, everybody. It is Uncle Mike. Today is August the 12th. It's a special edition episode. It is my father's 80th birthday. If he finds himself watching this video, this is to you. And today's going to be a good one. Today's going to be a good one. And you know what? I think I say that every time. I think I always do think they're going to be good ones. So the last video I did was pretty friggin' heavy. Dealt with some heavy concepts. And this one's going to be a little bit lighter. I mean, I think, I can only speak for myself, but we're moving to the point, we've been talking about for over a year now. It's getting closer, and there's just like, there is a heaviness which is out there. And, how it's affected me, one of the ways it's affected me, like I've kind of like withdrawn. I stopped taking new people for Skymancy sessions. I'm just kind of like not making myself quite as out there. And this past week, despite it being heavy, has also been filled with surprises for me. I had two friends that were planning on coming through last week, and they're going to stay the night with me and Jenny. And as life unfolded, it ended up that there were three separate groups that came by last week, all spending the night, not at the same time, but all said and done, we probably had about like 12 different visitors, all people I haven't seen for a long time, and it was a really, really, really nice. It was a really nice week. But inside that niceness, there's always the weirdness, and I guess they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. And that's what I'm here to talk about tonight. As I said, it was a heavy week. We talked about demons last week, and just just what's seemingly unfolding before our eyes. And so I want to kind of lighten the load. I'm going to lighten the load, and I've got three stories to tell you. All three stories that more or less took place over the last week, and they're all personal stories. And that's what we got here. So though they are separate stories, there is a continuity. And, I'm not going to really go into the continuity, but I'm going to lay it out there right now for you, the viewer, is to kind of think about it. Maybe not like consciously, like hard, but just be aware there's a continuity. There's something in the stories. Or, I say stories, but it's really one story. So with that being said, let's jump right in. Let's jump right in here. So, this here is a map of the area where I live, and this is where the three stories take place. This right here is going to be the first story. This right here is where the second story takes place, and this right here is where the third story takes place. And if you're familiar with my work, you probably have seen, or hopefully you've seen, I don't think it's up anymore, but The Secret on the Susquehanna. And within that, I talk very in great detail about why the Susquehanna River at the 40th parallel is so significant. And so this map comes from that. And so you'll be familiar. This is High Point Scenic Vista right on the 40th parallel. This is the Susquehanna River. And here are the three colleges. There's actually a fourth college, and that's about 80 miles right on this line, Washington College. It makes a cross. But nonetheless, this here is the bullseye. And all of our stories, they take place. This is where the first story, this is Millersville. This is right, the second point is probably right about here, and then this is the third point. So we want to begin, or at least this is how I approach it. I see everything. I mean, Earth could be thought of like the human body. Like every part of the human body has significance and purpose and does stuff. but that being said, like, the more you understand the differences, the heart isn't in competition with the eyes or the hands. Like, they all provide different things, or you don't want to lose any of them. But the whole thing is kind of special. And so if you look at the body, you can understand, like, what is special on the body. And you could say the same thing on Earth itself. And so it's not a competition. It's not saying, like, this is the only place where there's something really significant. But this is, one, it's one of those places. And two, because I happen to live here, to me it becomes very personal. And I encourage everyone to hold that attitude to where they live, because, the proof is in the pudding. But nonetheless, within Mike's world, everything within this circle is really significant. And for geological reasons and historical reasons, they point to something much, much greater. So hold that in the back of your mind. So the first story, which I'm going to talk about, is right here in my neighborhood in Millersville, which is right here on the map. And so there's a lot of ways to tell stories. And typically what I like to do is I'll just tell like one story, and I like to kind of like tease it out, and I go down this path and then I bring it back and roundabout, and that's what makes it fun for me to kind of like, I think about like, how am I going to go and structure the telling of the story, because it's a dance. It's a dance, anytime you have some sort of performance, and that's what I would call that, because there's a friggin' audience. There's a dynamic, and so when there's that dynamic, both parties get something out of it. So I normally think about that. I think about like how I want to go and craft the story. But because I've got three stories, I'm going to go and just tell you right. I'm just going to lay out and tell you what the story is. But then we're going to double back, because I got a lot of good visuals. So basically the story is this. I live in Millersville. I've talked about it in a bunch of videos in the past. Whole bunch of strange things brought me to this really strange, wonderful house. And like, that to me is the clues that the whole area, there's something sort of unique to it. And so I have that context as I go about, I've been here for, 18 months now. And I am on the lookout for places, and I walk. I've done this to every place I've ever lived, is like I really walk the area, and I become very, very familiar, and I identify the spots. And I have been, I've been doing this for as long as I've been in Millersville, and for the most part, I've identified quite a few locations, which I'm like, okay, this is something. And typically how I work is it's a combination of both visual, like something has to be very appealing to me visually, whether natural or like created through architecture or something like that. History, so there's this intellectual, and those give me clues as to where to kind of like zero in. But about 2 months ago, there's one specific spot which just, it wasn't calling me on the way which I normally identify locations. It was different. There was nothing like visually interesting about it, or there wasn't really anything like I could identify something historical that happened on the event. It was just like, there's just something inside. There's something inside which is speaking to me, and maybe that's how you always get like your kind of feedback message. But we're all different. That's not my primary way, but I recognized it nonetheless to be strong. So and this is like a grove of trees. It's like and there was one tree in particular. I love trees. I'm always paying attention to trees, and this tree as it relates to what speaks to me visually, like this would not fall upon it, but nonetheless, it called to me. So that was started about a month or two ago. And I pointed it out to the people in my life, people who I take walks with. I'm like, hey, this has been calling me. Like, what do you think? No one's like jumping up and down, nothing like that. So 2 weeks ago, I'm out on a walk with Jenny, and it was around dusk, and it was the night of the full moon, and the moon was rising. We're like, hey, let's go and walk towards the moon, because it was a beautiful night. It was a beautiful night and a beautiful moon, if you recall it. And as we were walking kind of in the direction of the moon, Jenny says, I think I see an owl. And where she sees an owl, where she thinks she sees an owl is right in this grove, right in this area, which has been drawn to me. And when I finally go and I see it as well, and it was an owl, we could tell by seeing its silhouette. It was perched on a branch in a tree, and it was perched on, as you could probably guess, was perched on the tree which I've been called to. So I'm like, wow, that's kind of wild. And we stayed and watched it for a little bit, and then we walked a little bit closer to it, and it let us get pretty close to it before it took off, and it flew like 100 yards or so, and it roosted on the ground, and we kind of followed it for a little bit. And then the next day we went and we're like, let's go see if we can see it again. And we timed our visit to that location like right when the lighting in the sky looked the same, the same type of dusk. And sure enough, we see it. We see it a second time. And we're like, all right, we're starting to, this might be a pattern. So then we go for the third night. We go the third night in a row. And we get there, and we're on the perimeter of, there's kind of like a grove. We're on the perimeter of that, away from the tree where we've seen it both nights. And we don't see anything. So we're like, all right, let's just sit down for a little bit and see, if it comes, we'll see what happens. And like a minute or two later, all of a sudden we see the owl. And the owl is on the ground this time. Like it has always been perched in the tree. And now it's on the ground right in front of the tree. And it's possible it could have flown in, and it flew in from the other direction. We didn't see it. And so this time the owl took off as soon as it kind of sensed that we were nearby. And so we walked over to it. And I walked around the base of the tree, and I've walked around this tree many times, and I notice, I'm like, there's a hole. There's a hole in the tree right at the base of the tree, and the idea occurred to me that, maybe the owl lives in that hole. That's why it appeared out there. That's why we always see it there. I don't know much about like owl behavior, but living on the ground, maybe they do that. I looked briefly to verify, and, they're burrowing owls, but they're not found in this part of the world. And so the next day I went and I looked at the tree, now this time in daylight, and I was able to see on the inside that it's hollowed all the way. So it's a very good possibility. So now I'm going to go and, that's more or less the story. The story is that. The story is the fact that I was like drawn to the tree, and then there's an owl, but there's more to it. But that's the basic story. Now we're going to fill in all of the, we're going to color this in now. So we saw this map. Now here's another map, and this is really cool about living in Millersville. This is a map, and unfortunately you can't see it. It says hover over Zoom. I did a screenshot on on a browser, and that popped up. But it says underneath it says 1894. So this is a map of Millersville in 1894, and we're going to see it up close in a moment. But it's got amazing detail, and it's not a big town, so it's really interesting, particularly if you have my perspective of seeing what it looked like, the place that you lived 100 years ago, 125 years ago. So all right, so we're going to begin with this. This right here is where this grove of trees is, and this is generally where our house is. And we start walking up here. And we're going to go. This is the fourth night now. And we're going to go to see if we could see the owl for the fourth time. And I think to myself, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to bring some stuff from the yard. I'm going to bring some leaves, maybe some flowers, anything which I can find, which is from the yard. And it's not because, and I want to put it in front of the owl. Because I want the owl to know it comes from our yard, so that I want the owl to know that it comes from our yard, so that maybe it will come and visit. In fact, I'm pretty certain that owl visited me a couple weeks ago, because I did have an owl sighting in front of, it flew right past me as I was like on the front porch, like probably around like 2 a.m. one night. It was really kind of trippy. But nonetheless, so I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I'm going to bring something to the yard. I'm like, I don't know how owls work. Like, I'm not saying this is how it works, but I'm also saying I don't know if this is how it doesn't work, and I'm willing to give it a shot. So I wanted to go and bring a something from the yard to kind of like, to as a gift to the owl. And I'll be the first one to admit, like, owls are like a mysterious bunch. Like, they don't have the best reputation. They're by nature, they're predatorial. They are worshipped in Bohemian Grove. There's a lot of like, owls, one of those symbols which have been used in all sorts of different ways. But nonetheless, they're captivating, and I was curious, and I was drawn to it for whatever reason. So I say that. So we're walking up from our house, and we're going to go to right here. And I say this to Jenny. I'm like, hey, I grabbed some of this stuff, and I'm going to put it in front of the tree. And when I say that to her, she's like, you know what? And we're walking up here. And she's like, I wish that I would have brought something too. I would have liked to have done that. But I would have brought something it can eat. And the moment she says that, and I kid you not, the moment she says that, and we're walking up the sidewalk right here, she looks down at her foot, and right off the sidewalk in the grass is an egg. Not like a chicken's egg, which you eat, but like a bird's egg. And if you've ever found a bird's egg just like out in nature, it's usually broken. It's perhaps poached from another animal, dropped, maybe fell out of the nest, all sorts of different things. And occasionally you can go and find birds' eggs. But this one right here, but it is uncommon. It's uncommon to find one, and it's even rarer to find one which is in a whole shape, which is what this bird egg was. And you could feel there was something in there. It felt liquid. It didn't feel like, there was like a bird in there. There's no idea. There's no nest nearby. I don't know how it got there, but sure enough, as soon as she said that, this egg appeared. So we continue to walk up, and as I said before, these maps are kind of interesting from the 125 years earlier of a place which you live. So this right here is the road we're on, and this is the same road. I can identify it because I'm familiar with the roads. The same road in this map. And if you look in this map, there is this kind of this right angle on this alleyway here, and there's this other kind of like alleyway with the right angle right here. This is a main road, and this is a main road. And when we look down here, those roads are still in existence. Obviously, more roads have been built, but here we have this road right here is this, and what we have right here to right there is this. And so we were walking right about here where it happened. It happened like right around here, which would probably be like right about here. And if you look really closely, let me see if I can zoom in even more so. Let me zoom in for you guys. If you look right here, this is the road. So this is where my house is. This is my house. My house was located, would eventually be built, but this is the part of Earth 130 years ago where my house is currently. We're walking up here, and it was right here where the whole thing happened with the egg. And if you look right here, you look at this corner intersection between these busy streets, you could see these gravestones. You see these gravestones. And in regular reality, the time which we are in, this is that space. This is the green space. This is this green space right here, and there are no headstones. But you'll see right here is a marker. Got the marker here, right here. This is that intersection. Here's the marker, and up close on the marker is a listing of all of the gravestones which were at one point, the gravestones were here, but they were taken down. These were here, and they were taken down. Obviously, nothing else was built. You could see there's a building right here, and this is where that building would be. So it's like this was the location. And so if you look closely on this, you'll see probably the last time this cemetery was used was around the 1870s. And so this monument has a marker. I think it might be a little bit lower, but it was erected in the 50s. And it's highly unlikely that, the bodies were taken out of the ground. They just removed the headstone. So this has always struck me as kind of an unusual place. And, I'm not really like like ghosts don't speak to me. I mean that metaphorically, and I mean that literally. That's not like one of my hot buttons. I'm not like uninterested in that, but it's just like not one of my, the areas which I'm naturally drawn to. Speaking to the dead, like none of that has ever held really any interest to me. But if I'm being honest with myself, I've always had like I never went through a goth phase. I never, that type of anything which we think about with like people or genres of people who are into the dead. That's just never been me. But I've always kind of, I do have a comfort level with like the death process and with cemeteries and stuff like that. So on a certain level, I know I am connected, but on like another level, I know like it doesn't interest me. But nonetheless, this is where that spot took place, or where Jenny found like this was it. This was the sidewalk. It's actually, we were walking up towards this, was before this, but nonetheless, this is where it was in this like vicinity when that egg was found. So we continue on to our journey, and she picks up the egg, and we go down to the tree. And this is the spot. As I said, it's nothing really kind of special. There are definitely special spots on the Millersville campus. And this, to the typical person, probably doesn't jump out, but it always called to me. And the tree in question is this tree right here, this tree. And what's kind of cool about it is you can see that these two trunks come together right about here. And it's actually on the other side, right around here, which is where we find our hole. And I'll come back to the hole in a little bit, but there are a couple other things about Millersville which I want to continue to go down on. So here's the where the two trees, they join right here, and I held my camera over this and took this picture, and I can't really tell very well right here, but it's hollow. So the entrance is right here. It's seemingly hollow. It's probably, I can imagine it could potentially be like, all connected and be a nice little nest. And this is in an overhead map. This is where we find it. And so to give you a point of reference, like probably right here, like 150 yards, not particularly far. You could easily hit a golf ball that far. Is where from that cemetery is where we find this. And this is at the intersection of, and this is what we were walking kind of like this way. We were coming up here and we saw the moon, and we started walking this way. And this is when we saw the owl. And when we were on the perimeter, we were like right around here. But this is where the tree is. And it's at the corner of Light Road and Cove Drive. Cove, Coven, well, I don't know. But I want to talk about Light for a little bit. So it's called Light because it's named after this guy right here. E.O. Light, and he was, where does it say here? Dr. Light entered the Millersville State Normal School in 1866 after serving the Civil War and teaching for 2 years. He became a professor of rhetoric and bookkeeping, and later a professor of pedagogy. I'm going to go with that. And grammar before being named principal. So there wasn't a president of the university, it was the principal of the university. He's associated with the school for 44 years. So this dude is legit. He was there, he like really, really committed his time right here. That's why, this road is named after him right here. And I think I've mentioned this in the past, he also is known, he's credited as the composer of the popular song, Row, Row, Row Your Boat. Now keep in mind, Millersville, unless you went to it, unless you live in the immediate area, you probably never heard of Millersville University. It doesn't have that reputation or a draw. But nonetheless, this character right here, you can see what his influence has been on the collective consciousness. Just through that song, Row, Row, Row Your Boat. Everyone's probably sung it. Anyone who speaks English, grew up speaking English. That may have been one of their earlier songs. And that song has probably more so than any others, quote unquote, children's song, has spoken to people on a very, very, very deep meaning. And so we go and we look at this EO light. And this here is from History of Lodge number 43. What does that stand for? Free and Ancient Masons? Is that what it is? Free and Accepted Masons, 1785 through 1910, with the biographical sketches of charter members, past members, and present officers. So that's where this has come from. This is like the history book of the Lancaster, this Freemasonic Lodge. And within Freemasonry, there are lots of lodges, but, there's some more storied than the others. I wouldn't say this is the most storied lodge, but it definitely is a storied lodge. Even if just from the fact that, a U.S. president was a member of this particular lodge, that often, ties in within Masonic value system. But anyway, so this is a list of all of the past members and includes EO Light. And we look a little bit deeper into it. This is Dr. Light was made a Mason in 1871. So let's go see this. When did he start teaching at the school? He became a professor in 68. So 3 years later, he joins this Freemasonic Lodge. And then we see at the bottom, at the meeting of the Supreme Council of the Ancient Accepted Scottish Rite for the Northern Masonic Jurisdiction of the United States of America, held in Detroit, Michigan, in 1884, he was elected to the 33 degree. So this is a legit Mason. This guy's a 33 degree. Only a very, 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 very small percentage, become 33 degree Masons. Obviously they're, I say obviously, I'm not a Mason, but from what I've read and from what I understand is the system goes on way beyond 33 degrees. But within this particular, the Scottish Rite, 33 degrees is the most known, or the highest known level. So this guy gets initiated. He's a 33 degree. He was awarded that at this Northern Masonic Jurisdiction meeting, and then he also received this degree at the meeting of the Supreme Council in Boston the following year. So, I don't know the significance, you keep on getting named 33 degrees in different lodges, is there a difference? But nonetheless, this guy was legit in their eyes. And Masonry, you think of what, at the very least, it is a magical operation which is happening right there. This guy is deeply, deeply connected into their teachings. And we can see, just from this, though his name is not necessarily all of the people, few people, I would say very, very few people would know who is the author of this Row, Row, Row Your Boat. That comes through him. So this guy is one of the most important persons in the history of Millersville. Well, we're going to go and continue to talk about Millersville, because what my sense has always been this. My sense has always been this, as I said in the beginning. This whole area is significant. In fact, Millersville, I think, is even more significant because we've got a college here, college here, college here, and there's a college down here. But there's only one school which is found on the inside, and that is Millersville. It's right there. And so it's indicative of significance, and it's right. This is where all the action happened. This is where all, this part of, if this is Lancaster City right here, to the west and to the south is the really interesting kind of occurrences where people lived, the Susquehannocks, the petroglyphs, obviously the 40th parallel and the Susquehanna River, all that. So this is where we find Millersville. So when you begin to see both this unusual connection, or at least this is how I see it, you begin to see this unusual connection with this area. And, being pulled into it, and then the whole thing with the owl, and, so I'm what are all the different pieces of this puzzle? So we're going to keep on going down. That's how I look at this. And when I see this guy is their one of their most important members, and how important he was with that all kind of adds up. That adds to it. It adds to, like, okay, it's starting to become more and more clear as to, maybe what this area is. I'm not saying that it's a Freemasonic area, but what I would say is the Freemasons are going to go and do something on top of something else, which is already significant for whatever that reason would be. So let's keep on going down with other weird Millersville stuff. So this here is just like kind of, on one hand, you're like, oh, well, what's the big deal? But I don't know. So how the story of how Millersville got created. It was the first normal school of Pennsylvania. And a normal school is what they used to call teacher schools. And teaching is so important in terms of shaping the overall consciousness of a mass of people. And so this here is the first teachers college in Pennsylvania. Every state, in this 1800s time period, they started having these normal schools. I think it was around the 50s or 60s they started calling them teachers colleges. But nonetheless, so how the story is said is in the 1852, some guys got together and said, hey, we should go and start a teacher school. And then they tell us in 1854, they built this building. It's called Old Main. And we're going to go into this a little bit more. And here, this is this is a marker right outside of where Old Main would have been. It says 1854. We see 1854 is when it was built on the Millersville's own website. This is from their history. And then we see 10 feet away from this sign is this sign right here. And it says Millersville University, founded in 1855. And all of those numbers are consistent. And just, I don't know. That just always strikes me as strange, because I'm like, I don't think that's how the world works. It's like, if you're going to go and start a school, you start small, you get students, and then once you have enough students, you then would have funding, or you'd be able to justify going to build a building, and maybe you'd build a building slightly larger than the amount of your enrollment. But you don't do it this way. We're like, okay, we're going to build this enormous building, and let me tell you, it was enormous. And then after that, we're going to go and start our institution. But nonetheless, that's part of the lore of this school. And we're going to go back to our map here, and we're going to look at it. This is Old Main. Look at this massive building. This is in the middle of, it's about 15 miles outside of Lancaster City, which is, 1850. This map's 1890s, but let's go back to when the school was started. The 1850s, a good 70 years since the Revolution, I suppose. But you can look, there's nothing around here. And all of this was said to be farmland. It's 15 miles away from the closest city. And they build this. How did this happen? All this sort of stuff. But nonetheless, this is not the first. They built it in sections, is what we can see images of what the building looked like before this, which did not have all of these wings. But nonetheless, this is the building right here. Here's a color postcard. You could see it's a really grand, beautiful, if mud flood Tartaria resonates with you. It certainly has my curiosity, that's for certain. This would seemingly potentially fall within that storyline. Here's some more pictures of it. This is from a photograph from 1858. You could see this is what it first looked like. We could see it's right here as well. And this was expanded upon. And then in the 60s, they decided to tear it down. This was torn down. This beautiful building. Think about all of these East Coast colleges with their beautiful buildings, and that's part of the storybook of the college campus and college experiences, are these going into these buildings friggin' this. And so it was decided to be torn down, and then this was this was built on top of it in its place. This building right here. Absolutely, from an architecture speaking, It's soulless. This is communism architecture. It doesn't quicken the spirit to just see it. This is also kind of interesting. This is probably just mislabeling. I'm going to credit it to mislabeling, but I'm pointing out nonetheless. Millersville Normal School, 1898. We can go and see this right here, and it's the class of 1899. Not only that, like, it looks old. Like right here in this picture, like maybe this was taken in it couldn't have been. We could probably figure out the date of when it was taken, because it's missing that large edifice here in the middle. But nonetheless, I'm gonna assume that this is mislabeled, because it's gonna get really weird, because it's 1899. You can see this is it currently. This is that building which I was talking about, and you can see right next to it we have this. And this is a war memorial. And if you follow a lot of Ross Ben's work, he talks about the significance of the war memorial, and like what is done with kind of like the death magic and the war memorials, which we find everywhere in these urban spaces of geomancy. And so we see a memorial right here. And what's interesting is this is probably, it was erected 30 years before this. And I guess it's the quality and the caliber of the stone, but this looks brand new. Like if you were to see this today, this looks brand new, and these guys definitely have wear and tear. But nonetheless, we can see that's right there. And we see that this is a death memorial. We've got a death memorial right here, right in the center. Here's another picture of it. We could see the pillars right here. But this isn't, I started this with the cemetery and the missing headstones, and I'm talking and we're talking about kind of like the other side and all sorts of stuff, and we see all of this death memorial symbology, but it doesn't end there. Right here we can see the pillars. There are two sets of them. They're right there and right there. This is that building. And then there's this sculpture. And this sculpture is quite literally a missile hitting Earth. This is a sculpture of a missile hitting Earth right where the old Main was. Right where old Main was. We could see some other images of it. It's a missile. And we have this sculpture right here, which is nearby. You could see this is in the backdrop of it, and it's kind of like, it's abstract enough that it could be interpreted many different ways. But in context of everything else, right? In context of the missile and the war memorial, this certainly has like all of the continents which we picture on the map of Earth. Exploding up in the air, if you will. We have that right there. We've got potentially another one of these death symbols found in this location. Here's another view of it. Maybe that looks a little bit more like that. I found this strange. This is right around the corner. This is in the same part of campus. This is a stone, and this is a tribute to the founders. So these are like the people who started Millersville University, and this plaque is on a cornerstone. You can see the cornerstone right here. The date is 1874, and its placement is right at the base of this tree right here, which is very close to the globe and the Earth, or the globe and the missile statues I saw. But the thing which bugged me about this, which doesn't make sense, is like what is implied, or at least what I assumed. Maybe this is all a mic. Maybe you shouldn't be assuming this, but I'm assuming this because I'm on the college campus and they're paying homage with this monument to the founders, that they're going to go and have like maybe a building which was taken down, and they've kept the cornerstone for prosperity's sake, and they're going to go and use it on as part of this memorial to their founders. But when you go and you look at Millersville's website, and it lists all of their buildings, and it includes the buildings that are still around and the buildings which are no longer around. Like, it's got a chronological order. And so we saw Old Main in 1858, and then we got the Soldiers Monument in 1867, and then we have the fountains in 1888. but there was nothing about 1874 in here. Like, if this were a building on campus, like if it was taken down, it would have been located right here. Like, there's no, like, who or what is this, right? You know, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make it. Well, okay. The main story doesn't make sense. This story makes sense when there's more information. There's more information. And then right next to this, to like kind of round out our, ode to death in this park is right here. And this is one of the, we can see right here, we can see these are the four primary buildings from 1874. This one and this one are no longer here. This one's here and this one's here, and that's what we see in the background right here. We see that building. But right in front of that building is this plaque. And this plaque is for a former president of another president memorial, right? We talked about Light. We talked about that other president. And now we've got this president, Robert Christie. I mean, who knows? Maybe it's the same family line as Chris Christie. I don't know. I checked real quickly, and it doesn't appear to be, but I didn't look at too tightly. But he and his wife and his children, they all died in a plane crash in 1970. You know, and so now we've got this, and that's, you know, anytime there's, you know, how many people do you know who've died in plane crashes? Like, it's not a common thing, you know. It's really, you know, it's a very dramatic and uncommon way which people die, and it's you know. 9/11, there's always a fear of this sort of thing. So we have the plane crash victims right here. I did a little bit of research. The plane crash was in Honduras. But nonetheless, that's what makes this central area. So this is gone. This is gone. This is still here. And all of this right here is that garden of death memorial. And then right here we have that new communism building. And then there's this building right here. We've got this other grand building. And these are the only pictures I could find of it. Like, look at this. Like, what were they doing building this out in the middle of nowhere and then tearing it down? They tore this one down. I couldn't find any demolished buildings on it. Like, this is spectacular. And if, you know, part of the whole sort of mud flood narrative is the windows that are, you know, the half-buried windows. And it looks like we've got some of those right there. Whether or not that's the case, I don't know. But this is an unusual building to find there. If we go and we look on the map where this is, this C I can identify all of this different stuff, and you could see it is right behind this building and then adjacent to this building right here. This right here is that building. This is that church. So this is what was built in its place, this square right here. And so they tore down this building in order to build this building. So that's what we have going on. But to make it most interesting is, if you remember where this building is right here, this is where that grove of trees is. This is where that light and cove, this is where the owl, whatever an owl may be. As all of this has been going on, I introduced to my boys season one of Stranger Things. And if you're familiar with it, Stranger Things has to do with MK Ultra and the Upside Down world and all this sort of stuff, which I find interesting. I find interesting in it. And in season one, in an episode which we just saw, the portal or access point to the Upside Down world was through the base of a tree. So I'm going to go and end this story. This here is a picture of the of the portal in Stranger Things, and then this here is the potential owl portal into some sort of upside down world. I don't know, but this is just how the story unfolded in real time in my life. So that is the first story. That is the first story right there. Now we're going to move on to story number two. So story number two, let's go back up here. Where are we? Story number two takes place... right down here. That's where we go. And so this story begins maybe about 2 weeks ago. Story begins about 2 weeks ago, and Jenny and I, it was one afternoon, we had nothing going on. We're like, hey, let's go out and let's take a hike. Let's go somewhere. And we decided that we wanted to go to a nature preserve, not too far away from the house. So we haven't been to for a while, but it's one of our favorites. And we get in the car and we start driving down there. And Jenny's driving. I'm not really paying attention. I've been to it, I don't know, like 15 times probably in my life. I kind of know how to get there, but it's also kind of like in a part of Lancaster, which is off the beaten path, and I'm not that familiar with. And she was driving and she was using GPS, and I wasn't really paying attention at first. And then I realized she was going away, which I was not familiar with. Maybe that's not the way I would have gone, but so we're going with it. And I was looking at her GPS because I like maps, and I'm curious of like the way it's going to be taking us. And her GPS, the way she has it set up, when you look on her phone, the top of the phone is always pointing north. So there are two ways which GPS can be shown on the phone. Either the top of the phone is always pointing north, or the top of the phone is always pointing the direction which you're driving. And it is the latter which I'm familiar with. And so when I was looking at hers with it facing north, I was like, this is really confusing. Like, I had to think it through, like, is this a left turn or is this a right turn where it's saying to go? And so from that conversation, what happened was I was like, wow, okay, well, I usually have a very, very good sense of direction, and I can't this is not logical to me, so I made a conscious effort. I'm like, I'm going to try to disconnect with my normal sense of direction because there's something which was not working within me. Otherwise, I'd been able to follow along. And I'm like, let me go, it's a little experiment. Let me go see if I could do that and find my way. So we go and we do that, and then we get lost. GPS takes us to the wrong place. I don't know where we are. All this sort of stuff happens. We're kind of laughing because we were like, we're going to go and play with like our sense of direction, and then we get lost going to this place. But we find our way there. We eventually find our way there, and we're brought in on a different way than which I'm familiar with. So let me first show you these things right here. So this is where we were going. Actually, we were going to a place called Trout Run, and because it brought us by another way, which I'm familiar with going to Trout Run, we saw that there was another nature preserve that neither one of us had ever been to, which is literally the parking areas were, a 2-minute walk down this very kind of rural road. And this is 5 miles. So this is Millersville. This is where we live, and it's about 5 miles away. And this is also about 5 miles from the petroglyphs, the Susquehanna River petroglyphs. This is where they're found right here. And so I point that out, like we are in, like this is a rural, like not agricultural rural, but like wooded rural part of Lancaster County. And this is an area which was very, very, it's just archaeologically known that this was significant to the Susquehannocks, to the people who lived before. Like this area was really, really important. We know that the petroglyphs were right here. This is very close to it. So like, it's not a hard assumption to think that like, this, and you'll understand why in a moment what I'm talking about, why this place which I'm talking about was probably, significant, or at least it's within the realm of people being here. So, okay. Also, I found this picture. I thought this was kind of cool. While I was looking at all the Millersville pictures, I saw this. This is Little Indian Rock. So there's Big Indian Rock and Little Indian Rock, and they're both in the Susquehanna, and it's just on these rocks where all the petroglyphs are carved. And this is the little one. This is the little one right here. Doesn't look like this nowadays. But I also want to point out, like, the river doesn't look like this. Like, this is before all the damming. Like, these kind of, maybe this was a particularly rough day, but I don't think so. I think that the river was just kind of how it looked back then. But nonetheless, we ended up going to Steinman Run. So we were going to go to Trout Run, but then we found this is the entrance point to Trout Run, and it goes all along here to here. But we found this Steinman Run, and we decided to go there instead. You know, we recognized like a lot of weirdness was going on. We're like, all right, let's follow along with us. We got disconnected from our old ways. We're going to go within. And so, just as I did in the other story, like I'm going to just tell you what it's all about. We found a spot. Which is, I don't know what it is. We've since brought a whole bunch of people to it and showed them, and we're just calling it the Destiny Wall right now. And there are two very unique qualities, or two qualities which I'm really going to jump out and try to tell you about, and I'm going to show you. The images which I have do not do justice, but these are the two things. The first thing is there is an exposed portion of rock from the ground, and it is very, very smooth, and it is strikingly beautiful, and it's covered with moss. Now, I pay a lot of attention to like rock outcroppings, and like I just know what the texture looks like. I know the bumpiness, and the smoothness of this is uncommon. Whether it was shaped, you know, who knows? Now, the second thing was right in front of this wall, which has this amazing tree. There is like a really small creek which you walk across, and the creek has its bed is almost one solid sheet of stone, and if you look closely, you're going to see there's a channel in this stone, and it looks like it's perfectly cut. And what I mean by that is with right angles. It's not like a rounded channel; it is a right angle channel, and so both these straight lines, like the straight line channels and the wall rock, you know, that's not what you see. That's not what you see in the natural world, and particularly next to each other, and particularly in a sacred location. So, this is right along the time of the whole sort of Millersville owl experience. Is we got lost, and then we found this spot. So without further ado, let's go look at the spot. So as I said, it doesn't really do it justice, the pictures, but this is the wall. This is the wall, and normally, like you can see, like there's a little bit of indentation right here, and you can see the texture of the stone beyond that, but all of the stone around here, like the different different parts of the exposed edge protrudes further, like it's inconsistent, but here is smooth all along, and we have another one of these double trees, and it's a striking viewpoint when you see it. We can see right here, this is like the wall. I try to get close to it so you can get an idea of like how flat it is. Like, you know, these would normally like jut out here, like some would go in, jut out, but was smooth, and it's got this amazing moss, which just begs for like a gentle touch and approach. And then this is the tree that grows out of it. Here we see kind of like compared to the double tree, which I just saw the day before. And then here are pictures. This is not the same one. This is spread out over like maybe 30 feet. You could see these, like, here's the crack. You could see, like, you can see right here the water going through this channel, and the 90 degree and this consistency in width of this channel. Here's another picture of another place where it's cut out. I just thought this was kind of cool, like the way the light played upon it from the camera, and this is just it blown up. And here are a variety of these straight lines which we see all over the place. And so now I'm going to show you a short video. This is walking into it. This is what the nature preserve looks like.
this cutout is about 15 feet up the creek. Toph, why don't you step out? There we go. So this is where the other cutout is. And so we're about 15, 20 feet up the creek. And the zigzag pattern isn't so obvious here, but you can kind of sense it. You can see this one is coming out from this line, right there. And it goes all the way here to the other side of the creek, and then it cuts back. And so we see the same thing happening with those cuts up there. It keeps coming up. All right, now we're getting near the source of the water. And you can still see this line. This is a completely different cutout from all the others. We come up here and you can see this is all just like one solid stone face, whereas the rest of the area is not.
All right. So, as I said, I don't think that really captures, like, and what I definitely didn't do is show, like, those cutouts. And they make a zigzag pattern in this, like, this solid bed. But it's right in front of that wall. They're connected. And there's also, like, this stone in front of it, which, I mean, it's a spectacular place. And so what happened after Jenny and I... We saw that. So that the film which you just saw was I went down with my boys. But that was not when Jenny and I first discovered it, like 2 days earlier. So we continued, we spent some time, we recognized like, wow, there's something going on here. There's something significant. And we continued on our hike. And so this is where you park right here. This is the map of it. Like it's a horseshoe. It's a horseshoe. So we're like, okay, we'll just continue around. We'll continue around. And the horseshoe never brought us anywhere. Like we would take it and then somehow we would be on another road. We had no idea where the road was. We're following it. Neither one of us are we both are familiar with being in the woods, and this was being in a nature preserve. Like this isn't like really like, in the outback, if you will. And we can't find our way out of this. We can't find our way out of it. We tried, like, there are a couple places where it broke off, or like we said before, there's no way, that's it. And we followed those and nothing. We had to go and backtrack all the way through. This huge, like, thunderstorm hit us. Like, it was getting dark out. It was just like, I don't know what we walked into, but we walked into it. We recognized it. We got lost going there. We got lost there. Places we should not have been lost, but we made it back, and that's story number 2. And now we're on to story number 3. Now this one is a whole lot. This is the best story. I saved the best for last. So for those of you who are still around, like, lucky for you. So last Friday, I was given a tour. I was given a tour of one of the rights of the 40th parallel. That's one of the things I'm still doing right now. So like, if you want a tour, you get in touch with me, and I can give you either like, one specific place, or we do a whole day. Or you could also order a copy of the rights of 40th parallel, or you could even go and just do it yourself. You can always do it yourself and just get inspired. But nonetheless, where I was giving a tour was at spot number 3 right here, which in the rights of the 40th parallel, it's the first right. It is It's at Chickies Rock, and I call this the Rite of Destruction. And the reason why I call it the Rite of Destruction is because it's got kind of like a dark, destructive energy. But you go there with like the idea of something you want to go and destroy, something you're ready to let go of, something you're holding on to. And so this here's a map of it, and we go and we walk all the way through here. And each one of these markers is like a significant marker, and like, this is for this, and this is for that. And then you go through this tunnel, and this tunnel's kind of like the portal. Like in the book, I explain where all these places are and like what you're looking at. And so this is the portal, and then the end point is to go into this furnace, So I'm going to begin by showing you first footage. What's exciting about this is I've got I was giving a tour to a gentleman who drove up from Norfolk, Virginia, and I had my friend Mark with me, and Mark filmed it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to see the walking into this. We're walking into here, and I want to show you this because well, I just think it looks kind of cool. This is not the point of the story. The story goes somewhere. But it's cool because it really does, like from the lighting of the camera, it looks like I'm walking into something. I'm walking into a portal. So let us begin.
Get out there and be healthy.
That is the tunnel, which you see in the map.
See it?
Yep.
Right below that wall.
As we're walking up, like a branch fell right in front of us, landed on the trail. You'll see me pick it up in a minute.
Yeah. Which one of the leaves would you say?
No, I didn't track it down. To me, it was kind of like three. Yeah, this pointy guy. There's another one.
Now the light's starting to flicker.
Was this where these guys were messing with you, or?
No, this one, it was a day in January, 70 degrees out. It was beautiful out, and I was going full speed, no hands, and then I came into the tunnel, and the entire tunnel was a sheet of ice.
Just kept going.
And the trajectory I was going in was going to bring me right into the wall. And so I lay it down.
So you ditched just a.
I think my car. Notice the shape outside. It's almost like a cube. Right angles.
You can see why it's the Rite of Destruction. This kind of feels like a dungeon. All right, so if you were paying attention, I made reference to a crash which I had on my bike going through that tunnel. And that tunnel is like kind of like a weird tunnel. It's always a weird tunnel. And this is the Rite of Destruction. It's got kind of like a dark energy. And like, the last couple of weeks I've been working with like a whole bunch of like, some of the unsavory parts of life, the video I did before with the demons and like what's going on with the owl and like getting lost in the woods. And so if you recall, if you've been listening to my stories for a while, I've once told a story of being attacked by a gopher, by being attacked by a gopher, being attacked by a raccoon, on the trail, and how I had to fight it off, and so that's in my consciousness. Like, that really happened. Like, that's in my nervous system. So the point of all this is, shortly after, we're sitting down in that place, in that spot. That's the furnace. When you go and you look at this right here, that's what this is. The whole walk goes through here, and that's where you arrive. Here's a picture of it. It's an impressive place. We're sitting down and we're talking, and then I hear out of my the periphery of my hearing, I could hear an animal or something moving through the wooded area really, really fast. I mean, like fast, like it's running, and you could tell it's got some size. It's not like a squirrel. And I look over and I see it's a groundhog. It's a friggin' groundhog. And it's charging right in, and we lock eyes for a split second, and all of its fur is up. Like, you don't think of a groundhog as an aggressive animal. Maybe it wasn't being aggressive, maybe it was running in, and then it was startled by us. Whatever it was, is when we made eye contact, like, all of its fur was up, and it was in an aggressive position, and then it turns and then goes into a hole which is located right at the base of this furnace here. And the beauty of this is we got all of that on film. So that's what we're going to go and watch right now. We're going to go and watch that video. So keep in mind all this sort of stuff. I'm sitting down, and you can watch me. You'll see my head, like, if you listen closely, you're going to hear the noise. You see my head, like, I look, and then I stand up right away, and I grab the stick. All right, so here we go.
This other side, by looking at, like, the stone. He's like, this has been added to.
Look at that surprise. This is it in slow motion. I look over, I see it. I grab the stick. You can see I recoil a little bit. I'm like, ah! And I stand up, and as soon as I'm halfway up, it runs by. Now look right here. You're going to see it run by. Shh. It's that golden groundhog. All right. So that was the conclusion. This was, another animal experience. It was all sorts of interesting, synchromystic elements. But what really got me is it was a groundhog. And if you're familiar with the work on the Susquehanna mystery, on the western branch, right here at Point B, is the National Groundhogs Day celebration in Puxatawney, Pennsylvania. This plays in deeply into Susquehanna mystery lore. So to go and have this groundhog experience, and then to be able to watch it, it's really freaking cool to watch yourself, like, to see how you responded in an unusual, surprising situation. It was fun to watch that, but all of this was very, very meaningful for me. And so probably where this leads me to now, specifically as it relates to this, is this little fact right here. As we talked about the Groundhogs Day, part of the Susquehanna River is the National Groundhogs Day celebration in Puxatawney, Pennsylvania, and that is the setting for the probably the most famous Hollywood movie about time loops. And I was just talking all about time loops, but Groundhog's Day with Bill Murray. And Bill Murray this is not the only time he's ever dealt with groundhogs, because if you remember the movie that introduced him to the movie public, it was in, I think, actually this may not have been his first movie. I think it was Foul Play, which may have been his first movie outside of Saturday Night Live. But nonetheless, this may be one of his most iconic roles, and it is with his battle with the gopher. Not exactly a groundhog, but a whole lot more similar than less similar to the groundhog. So, This is telling me that somewhere in the Bruce or the Bill Murray filmography, I've got a little bit of cinematic storytelling. So those are my 3 stories for you, my friends. The natural world, the mystical world, it is all around us, and now we have to look for it with even greater joy and interest, and I just gave you those stories, if anything, to inspire you to do the same in your actions, because the way the world is right now, you do not want to be putting your energy into the stories which they are peddling. Now, as I said a little bit earlier, I'm no longer doing the Skymancy sessions, but I am doing these tours, and I see myself continuing to do these tours for probably as long as I can continue to do it for the season. The gentleman who I gave it for on Friday, he came up from Virginia from Southern Virginia for it. So definitely people travel for these things. Hit me up if that's something you're interested in, or if you want to do this yourself, you just go and you can get a copy of the Rights to the 40th Parallel. You can go and order both of those on the website. I hope to hear from some of you guys. Without that, I don't think I got really anything else to say right now. Until the next time, this is Uncle Mike.